Hello, I'm Chris Parker with ParkerPhotographic.com, and today I have two images of this female Prothonotary Warbler, and both images were shot about 30 seconds apart, and I got lucky that she showed up when she did because the national park that I shoot a lot of my wildlife at has a sign out that says that these Prothonotary Warblers are an endangered species, and there's a maximum of 5 minutes of viewing time at this location. So once I got there, she showed up. I was able to get this first image before she fed her offspring, which are nesting inside of this dead tree, and you can see the insects inside of her beak. Once she reached in and fed them, she came out with something else inside of her beak, and it kind of looks like a grub. So I'm not sure if that's what that is or not. Let me know what you think it is in the comments below. So if it is a grub, was it too big to feed her offspring and that's why she's pulling it out now? Not quite sure what was going on there, but it's kind of a cool little story. Now, as part of this photo shoot, I also captured video based on my point of view of what I'm seeing when I look through the camera, and I was able to capture this interaction that lasted not more than 30 seconds, maybe 20 seconds or less. And it's a small snippet of the entire morning that I was shooting on this day. And if you want to see more points of view from me in the wild, shooting wildlife, check out the link in the description below to check out that point of view wildlife photography video. Now for this video, I want to show you how I edited this image, and here's the before and after. So the image on the left is straight out of camera. No edits have been done to it yet. And this is my final edit right here on the right side. So the edits that I apply are pretty simple because I try and keep things looking as natural as possible. And for this particular image, because I was shooting during golden hour, the color of light at that time of day is much warmer versus what I actually captured. So I was using the wrong white balance at this time of day. So the first thing I did was I adjusted the temp and the tint to be much warmer than it was originally. So if I go ahead and reset these, you can see that the temp and the tint was 5300 and plus 14. After, it was 6000 and plus 20 on the tint. So that makes it much warmer than it was originally when I shot it. Now, another thing that I noticed after I brought it into Lightroom is it's a little bit underexposed. So I increased the exposure by about a half a stop. The highlights were really bright, so I toned those down by adjusting the highlights to the left at -24 to make those highlights darker. The shadows were really dark, and I wanted to bring out some detail in that area. So I increased the shadows to +100, and I also brightened up the image by adjusting the white, and I increased that by 18. So that is the basic tonal adjustments that I do inside of here, but I also apply some texture, clarity, and dehaze, not in this case, but usually I will apply a little bit of each to refine or give some clarity to the details. And these edits here will apply edits along the edges of different size detail to create some contrast, which gives the appearance of sharper details. I also applied a tone curve to add a little bit of contrast, and I also applied a vignette to help us focus more on the subject versus the bright edges and the corners, which you will see here once I turn this off. So you can see how much brighter it is without that vignette. And the vignette helps us direct our viewers' attention more towards the center of the image or towards the subject. Now, the magic really happens in the masking that I applied for this particular image. And I did what is known as dodging and burning. So basically, you're making parts of the image brighter or darker. In this case, I did a lot of darkening in the image, except for the eyes. I made the eyes brighter. So the first thing I did was adjust the eye via this mask right here. So let's go ahead and zoom in. And the edit that I applied was an increase to the exposure by almost 1 stop. Now, if we take a look at the before, we can see that the eye is underexposed and almost pure black, which creates kind of a lifeless feeling to the subject, which is why I increased the exposure to add a little bit of life back into those eyes. After that, I selected the subject with a new mask called Select Subject, and Lightroom did its magic and selected the Prothonotary Warbler, and I applied these adjustments here, which included an increase to the exposure by a tad. I increased the shadows to bring out more details in the warbler, and I also added some effects here for texture, clarity, and dehaze. Again, that's just adding a little bit more contrast and sharpening those details. Now, when I applied these edits, I realized that a portion of her head was overexposed, and I had to use my brush to subtract from that part of the mask, which you can see right there. And if I turn this off, you can see how that area is overexposed, which is why I removed that part of the edit in that area. Next, I targeted different parts of the foreground and background with a linear gradient. So I have two, one for the left side, one for the right side. So the first one here is on the left. I'm going to go ahead and turn that overlay on by pressing the letter O, and I'm going to show the tool by pressing the letter H. And then when I click right here, you're going to see the handles that I used to extend from the left to the right. Now, based on this, you would think that the edit would be targeting the Prothonotary Warbler as well, and it was. And I didn't want that, so I had to subtract the subject from this mask. Now, by hovering over the center, you can see where that mask was, but once I removed the warbler from the mask, it's not affecting, or that edit is not affecting the warbler. So to do that, you're going to subtract and select the subject to remove the subject from that mask. I also did the same thing on the right side. I subtracted the subject after I applied the mask, and the edits that I applied were pretty similar, and it was basically making that part of the image darker. I did the left side darker than the right side, not by much, but enough to shape that light in order to make that Prothonotary Warbler stand out even more. So here's the before and the after. So these edits are subtle, but I think it's enough to help our viewers center on or focus on the warbler more than other elements in the scene. Now, the final step of my editing workflow is to clean up the image by removing any digital noise or digital artifacts and to make the subject tack sharp. Now, we have tools in Lightroom to do this, but there's a better tool that does a better job versus what we have in Lightroom. And what I use is Topaz Photo AI. And I'm going to show you real quick the difference between sharpening with it versus not. So I've already applied noise removal, and I've applied the lens blur sharpen model. And this is the before. And when I slide this to the left, it's going to reveal the final results. And look how much sharper that Prothonotary Warbler is. How awesome is that? I love it. To see the magic of Topaz Photo AI for yourself and to try it on your own images, check out the link in the description below for a free trial, and you'll be blown away by how awesome this editing software is. Now, if you want to continue learning about Topaz Photo AI, check out this playlist.